couldn't send asylum seekers to Rwanda under the deal it had done with the Rwandan government because Rwanda wasn't a safe country. So the UK has now developed a twin-track approach. It's agreed a new treaty with Rwanda before it was relying on a memorandum of understanding. And that treaty makes changes to the sort of processes inside Rwanda, in particular what would happen to people sent there. The court was very concerned that under previous agreements, the Rwandans had deported people back to unsafe countries. So they thought that the UK couldn't guarantee that it was a safe place to send asylum seekers as they're required to do under international law. But at the same time, the UK has developed domestic legislation, that's what's being voted on today, which is basically says that any court has to deem Rwanda safe, and it excludes almost all routes that as an asylum seeker could bring a legal challenge to their deportation to or their removal to Rwanda. So the big issue is it legally watertight enough? Does it reconcile the UK's obligations under refugee conventions, European Convention on Human Rights? That's the concern to one side of the Conservative Party. The concern of the other side of the Conservative Party is there still is a risk of some legal challenges, particularly individual cases going to the European Court of Human Rights.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a test for his authority, for his leadership, Rishi Sunak, I mentioned. Where do you think this is going to land? As you say, not all the MPs believe this is the right road ahead.
So the Prime Minister is in a terrible bind, basically, because he's walking a precipice. On the one hand, the sort of more left-wing Liberal Conservatives said, well, we can stomach, I think was the phrase being used by the leader of their One Nation caucus, we can just about stomach the legislation as it is. If you move at all to toughen it up, then you're going to lose our support. People reckon there are around 100 Conservative MPs out of the 350 or so in that caucus. But then there are massive groupings on the right of the party who've been looking at the bill and saying it's not tough enough for us. Now, we're not sure what their tactics are. One tactic would be to vote for the bill at this stage. This is just its second reading, and then introduce amendments when it goes into its committee stages to toughen it up, to plug what they see as the remaining loopholes. The problem for then is that if they succeed in doing that, and they probably wouldn't because they don't think there's majorities in the Commons for toughening this bill up, even if they succeeded, would they then lose the support of the more left-wing Conservatives when the bill comes back for final consideration in the Commons? And of course, even if the Commons could agree a bill, it then has to go to the House of Lords, and the House of Lords has a lot of constitutionalists there, a lot of lawyers there who will express reservations about all these clauses that are in the bill as it stands, which basically exclude the courts from looking at whether this meets our obligations under quite a lot of domestic law and under other international agreements.
It seems like such a fraught path. Rishi Sunak's polling is so low. Why is he sort of staking everything on getting this legislation across the line?
Well, it goes back, I think, to some of the commitments he made over the year. One of his, at the start of 2023, he set himself 5 things that he was going to deliver. And one of them, and he keeps on appearing on podiums with this emblazoned on it, was to stop the boats. And he's taken lots of advice from Australians. It's very much modelled on the Australian scheme of dealing with people trying to come to the country without visas and illegally and claim asylum when they're here. The UK doesn't have the same options as Australia because our boats are coming across 22 miles of channel, of the English Channel, rather than coming down from Indonesia into international waters and stuff like that. So they get here, basically. They get to the UK. We can't turn them back before they get to the UK. So this is his real problem. So the idea the Prime Minister's managed to stake everything on this Rwanda scheme, which wasn't actually invented by him. It was invented by Boris Johnson, so 2 prime ministers ago, and his then Home Secretary, Priti Patel. That was designed to act as a deterrent, to say to people trying to come across, being trafficked across the channel, there's no point trying to come here, because if you come here, you're going to end up in Rwanda. And the idea was that would act as a deterrent. Now, a lot of people have said, actually, there's no evidence it will act as a deterrent, but it's become almost totemic that getting flights off the ground to Rwanda, the first flights were due to take off last summer, summer 2022, was stopped by the intervention of the European Court of Human Rights, that it's become almost totemic that these flights need to take off as symbolic of policy. So the Prime Minister's really got himself impaled on a hook, and he's trying to struggle to get himself off it, but it's really, really very difficult, because he's left himself with virtually no hiding place on this. And even his new Home Secretary, who it's reported had, before he became Home Secretary, described this as in inverted commas, not sure what time this is going out in Australia, but he used a expletive about this policy, saying it was a mad idea, to paraphrase. He said this isn't the be-all and end-all of the policy of dealing with illegal migration. From the Prime Minister, it's become virtually that.
Yeah, indeed. And you don't need to have any concerns, because we're going out quite at a decent hour where most of the kids are in bed, Jill. It'll be interesting to watch, as you say, whether he manages to untangle himself. Good to have you on. Thank